Over the inside of my kitchen door, I have a sign that says, "Thou shalt not whine," spelled W-H-I-N-E. My children think it is a sign for them, but it's a sign for me. I bought it before the oldest of them could read, and it is hung in every kitchen I have had since. I don't know about you, but I totally understand why after 6 weeks on the march, after crossing the Red Sea, the people of Israel are whining, grumbling. Whining is slightly derogatory, but they're grumbling. This is not only the biblical version of, "Are we there yet?" but it is familiar for anyone who's taken a road trip with a family. You know, and somewhere in the late afternoon, the very late afternoon, someone who's ever in the back seat wants to know about when we're going to be eating. We are born to grumble, and when the grumbling comes from an empty stomach, most of us have no problem saying, "When are we going to eat?" The story of Exodus, as I keep saying, is universally human. Now, the people in the back seat have by this time, and definitely back then, run out of energy bars. Their water bottles are nearly empty. They probably finished playing whatever games they brought. And after 6 weeks, their stomachs are empty and they are thinking about comfort food. I don't know what your comfort food may be, but I know what mine is. And when I'm feeling anxious and tired of whatever new experience that I am dealing with, my comfort food starts calling to me. And so apparently for the people in the back of the caravan, their comfort food is calling to them. And what they think of is something they had back in Egypt. Now you may have heard pots of meat, which is more modern, but the traditional translation is flesh pots. A word that has shifted in meaning from something like a crock pot or a stew pot to something that is short for Vegas. Dissipation, disillusion, and lechery. Flesh pots of Egypt. And one presumes if it's Vegas, buffets unlimited. But you can understand, if you have ever come home tired and hungry to the wonderful smell of a pot of stew and fresh baked bread or biscuits, the empty feeling in their stomachs concentrated their mind not on their freedom or the excitement of their excellent adventure to follow God to a new land. Nah, they wanted their flesh pots and the smell of the hot bread fresh from the Egyptian bakery, the little one that's right down there on the Nile. And the noise from the back of the buses and the caravan keeps rising. I want you to know what these people don't do. There is one wet road that it does not appear that they even think of taking. They don't take the inner road to prayer. Now, remember, they have seen a string of miracles and celebrated them. But that was then. This is now. Are we there yet? I want my comfort food. I'm sick of this road trip. I don't know, as I said about you, but this is a reoccurring theme in my life and my life with God. You know, phone crisis, I pray quickly. But when it's long, drawn out, uncertain, one thing after another, I grumble. Unless grace grabs me, I will always grumble. That's why I hung the sign to tell me, remember, don't whine. And that brings me to another observation about why this story is so helpful to me, and I hope for you, as I consider how I and many people function under stress. And that is, it is exactly comfort food that I need or want, at any rate, when I'm in a new situation, which is taking much longer than I thought it would. And I don't even know what there yet will look like. And the road seems long and barren, kind of like the last 6 months, maybe. The good news of the gospel that is here for us in the book of Exodus is that God answers their need. As he had before, he does it again. There will be meat in their pots tonight and bread in the morning. Moses stops the caravan and goes to a place where there's 70 palm trees and lots of water. And suddenly they're inundated with quails, flocks and flocks of quails. In the morning, to go with their coffee, they're little cake things that look like teeny tiny little madeleines. And it says later in chapter 16, taste as if they were baked with honey. God sends them food, but it is, notice, a new cuisine and not the comfort food they craved. And furthermore, and this is very important if you're going to follow Christ, they have to work for it. The quail do not arrive plucked, prepackaged in shrimp wrap, and delivered in the blue apron boxes with a box of ice in the bottom. They have to catch and pluck the quail and cook them and wait until their pots are fragrant with the smell of poultry dinner. And in the morning, they have to be up early and gather all that bread from heaven. Or you'll again find later in this chapter, it melts, it disappears. Christian life takes work and effort. It is the lot of all of Abraham's children to work for our food, at least most all of us. And if it is true for what we eat, it is even truer when we seek the bread from heaven. God always sends the bread. But we have to get up and we have to gather. Indeed, in the gospel, part of the point of the outrage of the workers who got up, who set their clocks for dark 30 so they could go down to the hiring office, is that they worked all day in the heat and they don't get any more than the people who got hired at 4:45 in the afternoon. Again, they grumble. And wouldn't you? We want more for ourselves, especially if we feel that we work for it. But here is the paradox of grace. Jesus isn't talking about fair wages. He's talking about the mercy of God that provides us all that we need. And the longer we have worked for God, the more we know we need that daily grace, that bread from heaven. It may happen to those of us who, and I was not one of them, grew up from the day you wore your first diaper and were brought to church. But grace also comes to those who come later, like St. Paul or Chuck Colson said. Like the grumbling people in the back of Moses' caravan who want their crock pot dinners and biscuits, Jesus tells the story of the workers in the vineyard to make us think and turn inwardly to the owner of all, and be delighted that if someone came late, they are still invited to the table. They still get full payment, the payment of a relationship with God, the payment of grace. Back again to the 16th chapter of Exodus. It says a few verses beyond what was read today. Some gathered less and some gathered more, but all had enough and were full. I think there is not only the spiritual food that we will shortly receive from God, the body of our Lord Jesus Christ, the true bread from heaven, that sacramental body. But I think this is also true for us in this time when it feels like we've been on a long, strange journey. We do not know how it will end. We do not know how long it will go. And it's pretty normal to hunger for everything we had before the pandemic began. May we find hope and strength in this story from Exodus of how others before acted in times of stress. St. Paul says this story was written so we might not copy them. We have to trust that God will give us what we need. But remember, we will have to probably work to see it and gather it up. We need to remember to pray first and trust God and try not to grumble and whine, and know that He will bring us, all of us, to a new and good place. And how long it will take? Now don't grumble. I don't know. Amen.